Welcome to our second free video lesson. In this lesson, I'd like to explain some of the things that go on with pronouns. Now, pronouns are extremely important in the English language. They act as a shorthand and they make our sentences look much more fluid and interesting. Now, a pronoun is a word which we use in place of a noun, either a normal noun or a proper noun. So, which of these two lines looks better to you? A. Tony is a teacher. Tony teaches English and science. Or B. Tony is a teacher. He teaches English and science. So that's one way that we use pronouns, to avoid repeating a noun or a proper noun where it would sound a bit silly. So, Tony is a teacher, he teaches English and science. That sounds rather better. Now, when we use he in that pair of sentences, it's a good example of a personal pronoun. And a personal pronoun is something that it stands in place of a person, or in very certain cases, a thing. Most usually, a person. Now, let's have a little bit of a look at the grammar of personal pronouns. We can use personal pronouns as both the subject and the object in English sentences, and they take a slightly different form depending on whether they're the subject or the object. Now, personal pronouns can also have three persons. By that I mean the first person is talking about you, yourself. The second person is talking only about the person or the people to whom you're speaking. And the third person is talking about a person or an object which is neither yourself nor the person or object to which you're speaking. All these pronouns have both singular, that means just one, or plural, that means more than one, versions. So, talking about the first person, in the singular, I would use I. But in the plural, I would use we. The second person is very simple, right? If it's one, I talk about you, but if I'm talking about you and your brother, I can still say you. So singular and plural is both you. The third person is a little more complex. In the singular, we talk about he, if it's a boy, masculine, a man. She, if it's a girl, feminine, a woman. or it if it's just an object. So I might say, I'll give you some examples right on the next screen. Now the object pronouns are very similar, and these are the ones that come after the verb. The subject pronouns are the person or thing which is performing the verb in a broad sense. The object pronouns are the ones that are, simply put, having the verb done to them. He hit me. He is the subject, me is the object, hit is the verb. So, for the subject, first person singular, I use I. But if I'm the object of the sentence, the person to which it is being done, I would use me. So he hit me as an object. If it's plural, more than one of us, then it's us. You is still nice and simple. It's you or you, depending on whether it's singular or plural. And the third person, once again, has, in the singular, has gender. Him or her or it. As the subject, it's he, she or it. As the object, it's him, her or it. And in the plural, the subject version is they, and the plural version is them. The reason, of course, is that we might have a boy, a girl, and their dog. We wouldn't know what gender they would be, would we? Because there's a boy who's masculine, the girl who's feminine, and the dog who's neuter. So we use just one word in the plural version because we don't know what the gender is going to be. Let's look at the next slide for some examples. Just a quick word about gender. And personal third person singular pronouns show the sex or the gender of the noun that they are replacing. The plural ones do not, because we can't be sure. We might have a mix of male and female or female and object. We have to use a single word which is free from the gender. But in the singular, whether we're using them as a subject or as the object, they have gender. And here are some examples. This is Tony. He is my brother. You will like him. That's the masculine or male version. This is Jane. She is my sister. You will like her too. And here we use the feminine versions for both the subject and the object. Subject she, object her. Okay, so feminine, female versions. And finally, when we're talking about an object, we use the neuter. Here is a book. It is my homework. You might not like it. So, whether it's the subject or the object, we use the same word, it, for the neuter version, the one that does not have a gender. Now, let's take a closer look at the subject pronouns. And remember, the subject is the word in the sentence that is performing the verb. It's not the one that's having it done to it, it's the one that's doing it. Okay? So, and we can use pronouns as the subject of a verb, and in fact, all English clauses or sentences have a subject. And even if there isn't one, we use a dummy subject. We use the pronoun it, just to make sure that the rule is obeyed. And we'll show you some examples of that in a moment. So, here are a few examples of the singular subject pronouns. I like this house. Do you live here? It is very large. Is she your friend? He is my friend too. So, whether we're making a statement or asking a question, the subject pronoun, right, still works exactly the same. Now, an example where there isn't really a subject, but we use its or it just to make the rule correct. It's not raining. Okay? We're talking about the weather. But you'd never use the sentence, the weather is not raining. So we're not really substituting it's for the weather. We're just putting it in to say it's not raining. We can't say is not raining. Okay, it is not raining. It's not raining. And now looking at the plural version of the subject pronouns. We go to the movies together. You can all come too. They will play football instead. Now, let's have a look at the object pronouns. And remember, the object pronoun is the one that is having the verb done to it. It's not always exactly true, but usually. Okay, we can use personal pronouns both as the object of the verb, and we can use the same set of pronouns after a preposition. So, for example, using prepositions as an object, can you hear me? I can see you. Do you like him? We saw it yesterday. I met her last week, but I never met them. And a second set of examples using the pronoun after a preposition. My mum is waiting for me. I'll ask her for you. You can give it to her. It can be a present from us. It will show that we can be as kind as them. Sometimes it will happen that we want to use a pronoun, but we can't be certain of the gender of the noun that we are replacing. For example, if we were talking about a doctor, we know it will either be a man or a woman, but we can't be sure. We're just talking about a generic doctor. We solve the problem there by using the plural version of the pronoun. So instead of he or she, we will do they and the other derivations of that pronoun. Here are some examples. Maybe you should see a doctor. They will be able to give you advice. You could call them on the telephone or visit their surgery. Now, let's take a look at possessive pronouns. With a noun, we can usually denote that something belongs to it or that the noun owns something simply by adding apostrophe S, quote mark S. But pronouns, however, work rather differently. Okay, here we have slightly different words. We don't just use the original pronoun with a possessive S, we use a different word altogether. And also we have slightly different words depending on whether we're just talking about a possessive pronoun or whether we're using that possessive pronoun as an adjective to describe another noun. So, for example, looking at the first person singular, if we're looking at the simple pronoun, we just say mine. It's mine. That book's mine. It is mine. But that's just the pronoun. Okay, the second person singular, right, we'd say it's yours. And literally we could say that. The book is yours. With the third person singular, we use his, hers and its. Notice the hers. Okay. The dress is hers. Now for the plural, it's quite simple. The first person, we use ours. Second, we use yours, just like for the singular. And for the third person plural, well, we don't have gender there. So we say theirs. Now finally, if we're using a pronoun as a possessive adjective, then we use again slightly different words. For the first person singular, my. That's my book. Second person singular, we use your. Not yours as in the pronoun, but as the adjective your. It's your turn. For the singular, we have the gender, again, his, her or its. Notice that her does not have the S as the pronoun does. It's her dress. The dress is hers. But as an adjective, it's her dress. For the first person plural, our. Okay. It's our house. Second person plural, again, doesn't make much change. Your. For the third person plural, again, no gender. Once again, we don't use the S. So, it's their family. The family is theirs. So as an adjective, it's their family. This is a very common mistake that we see in students learning English as a second language. We stress how often we use the apostrophe before the letter S, but when we're using possessive pronouns, it or ours or theirs, we do not use the apostrophe. So the possessive form of it is its, not it apostrophe s. Now let's look at some demonstrative pronouns. Oh my goodness, what does that mean? If we demonstrate something, we show it. So demonstrative pronouns are pronouns that we use to point things out. We have two sets of these, singular and plural, right, for close objects and distant objects. So if the object or objects are close to us, right, either in time or in distance, we will say this for the singular and these for the plural. For objects that are further away, more distant, right, we will use that for the singular and those for the plural. So, for example, we might say, this is my old school, but that is the long way home. These are very close to us, but those are far away.
For example, we can say one cannot always do what one wants. And to illustrate the possessive form, we could also say one should mind one's manners. That is, one should be careful how you behave, particularly in front of people you don't know very well.
The last main group of pronouns to have a look at are the reflexive pronouns. Now, you might recognize that as sounding like the word reflection. Okay, and we use these pronouns where the object of the sentence is the same as the subject. There are a couple of extensions to that which we'll talk about in a moment. They can be used to add emphasis to a personal statement, to specify that the subject is alone, or finally that the subject does something without any help. Now they all end in self in the singular or selves in the plural. For example, Tony talks to himself. My sister taught herself Italian. We are teaching ourselves to speak Tagalog. For emphasis, I might say, I, myself, find it easier to learn French. To stress that somebody is alone, he is traveling by himself. And finally, to make it clear that the subject of the sentence can perform it without any help, they can do it by themselves. Thank you for staying with me for this short video lesson. I will be adding more to these series in the coming weeks. If you want to know more about myself, the classes that I offer in English or in science, particularly focusing on China as my main market, please click on my website, Tony EOS English at weebly.com. Or if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email either from the website or directly to my email eos.tonyh@gmail.com. So that's tonyeosenglish.weebly.com or eos.tonyh@gmail.com. gmail.com. Thanks again for watching. Thank you. Bye bye.